Good morning, everyone. I'm super happy you're here. This is going to be our first podcast or webcast, or I'm not even sure what to call it today, but it's the first time I'm going to be getting on air and talking about a lot of complex security and cybersecurity things. And we're going to have a fun time today. There's a lot of new things that are going on in today's society and a lot of new attacks that are happening to our businesses. And I want to talk about a few things that we can do to help protect our businesses from all the bad stuff going on today. So with that in mind, we'll sit here and wait for a few minutes until everyone gets here. And until then, we'll spend a couple minutes in green room until about 5 minutes after. And once that happens, we'll get started. If you have any questions while you're waiting, please don't hesitate to send them in, and I'll do my best to answer them here. We have a lot of material to cover, and it's a lot of good stuff. So I will do my best to put the answers in the middle, and we'll go from there. So we got still a couple more minutes to go. There's been a lot of stuff in the news about cyber attacks, lots of big things. So let me stop sharing my screen so you guys can see me. But I'm not. So anyway, so some of the news that's happening, there have been tons and tons of attacks, and not all of them are against big companies. And some are in places we wouldn't imagine. Some big telephone providers are having their backends hacked. There are hackers from overseas attempting to attack all of our small businesses. Microsoft recently had an attack on its authentication system. Google is now recommending to move away from saving your multi-factor authentication to the cloud because it allows vulnerabilities that someone can steal your multi-factor authentication. So all the things we've thought of as being safe and secure are becoming less secure. So how do we make it to where we are more secure, our businesses are protected, and we don't have to worry about things? Because business owners, we already have to worry about enough things. We have to worry about our employees. We have to worry about payroll. We have to worry about our customers paying us. And I know a lot of you folks are experiencing this too, because I talked to so many of my clients about our clients not even paying us. So finances are really tough too. So we're doing everything we can to run our business when the bad guys are trying to hurt us. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes as we go through to talk about what's going on and why we're doing what we're doing and how the cyber threats affect our business. And before we get started, just remember, you can ask questions throughout. I'll work on providing some answers. We're going to be here for a little bit. I hope less than 20 minutes to 30 minutes, but we're going to cover a lot of things on how to protect our businesses. So without further ado, let's get to the first thing, and it's a question for you. And I think I know the answer, but we all know ignoring a threat, does it make it go away? Does anything bad we ignore go away? No, I'm going to just say no. So let's start with that premise in the beginning. Our threats are not going anywhere. They're only getting worse. So over the next 20 minutes, even though I said threats are getting worse, we're going to spend some time and you're going to see some of the reasons why things are getting worse and how we could protect our businesses from those things. And to start with, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, things have changed. They've changed so much in the last few years. Since COVID through now, there are so many things that have changed, from how insurance protects our businesses and pays out if there's a problem to how the government wants us to report issues. They just had a report come out today that cyber attacks are reported in 19 different locations in the federal government, and it's so disjointed they can't keep track of it. So now they want to change that. So changes are happening fast, and we have to keep up with them. And one of the big changes is cyber attacks are increasing. So if we look at locally at 9 a.m. this morning, there were over 250,000 attacks against small businesses. It's crazy. And how many of them are hitting your business? How susceptible is your team to protecting you from cyber attacks? And how are you going to respond when one happens? So that's part of what we're going to be talking about today, is how do we deal with it when it happens? How do we prevent it from happening in the first place? So let's talk about a couple different types of attacks. So they're really diversified. We think of wire transfer, identity impersonation, identity theft. There's a story I told in my book a few years ago that was about a small business owner who was just doing his job. And a lot of us in small businesses, we're diversified, we're spread all over the place. We don't always talk to each other. And he regularly communicated with his bookkeeper about taking care of finances. Well, somewhere, and this was back in 2000, someone had gotten a hold of his Microsoft account and was able to impersonate him. But he spent about 6 months learning about the business owner before doing anything. And one thing he learned from the business owner was that when he was in meetings, he didn't check his mail. So after a few months of watching and learning and understanding his processes, when the business owner went in meetings, he impersonated him and sent emails to the bookkeeper and communicated directly with the bookkeeper about making payments to certain bills and whatnot. And the bookkeeper had no idea it wasn't him. And before the meetings were over, the bad guy deleted all the email communication with the bookkeeper. So the business owner knew nothing about it. The bookkeeper thought she was doing her job and she was happy, doing great. And then one day there was a lot of money missing. And it happened over such a slow amount of time that they just didn't know it was happening until it did. And of course, by then it was too late. They were able to protect the Microsoft account and stop the bad guy from being in there and get him out of the email. But by then they'd already lost $250,000. And in this case, there was only one thing that the owner needed to do to protect himself. And this is one thing, if you've ever worked with me before, you'll know I will say multi-factor authentication is the most important thing you can do. One, it's free in most cases to do it. And two, someone needs more than your password to get into your account. The multi-factor authentication Microsoft provides is free, and it makes it to where you don't have to worry about someone getting your account as easily. So it doesn't mean they can't. It just means they can't as easily. Oh, double slides here. So let's talk about some things you might already know about cybersecurity in your business. Some of these are not too exciting, but there's a few things we have to look at. And I talk about this with my clients all the time. What is a breach? What is a compromise? What is a business email compromise? Criminal mindsets, how things like that. So these are areas where most of us don't think about is the criminal mindset. I was at an event last night where I met somebody new, and he came up and talked to me afterwards and told me he believed that I was an honest person because I just told it how I felt. Now, he had just met me. How did he know if I was honest or not? And how do we know that about criminals? Because criminals are really good at hiding stuff and finding ways into abusing our human nature. So let's look at a couple things. And if you guys can, think about this for a bit. This is for you to think about. How concerned are you about your business being attacked? This is only a thing you can answer. I can share my thoughts and my feelings on it, but I talk about this with every one of my clients when we work together is how concerned are you about getting hacked? And I ask that before they work with me, then I ask again after they work with me. And the answer is always different. So being concerned about it is if that's a stressor you're taking to bed with you every night, that's one thing you can work to help get rid of. And I know as a business owner, you have enough on your plate already. So what do you think the biggest threat to your business is? Biggest cybersecurity threat? So there are so many cybersecurity threats, from email to malware in your computer, and they're all bad. And what's bad about them is many of them have evolved to the point where we have no idea that they're on our systems anymore. We've done all these things that we think are smart to protect us, but they're all dangerous. But I will say about 90% of all attacks come through email, and they come through email to your staff, and your staff may or may not be prepared for them, but most of them involve a single click to where a bad actor, a rogue agent, state actor, however you want to call it, is going to get inside that machine and take control of it. Fully automated. And from there, they determine if they can get more into your environment. One click of an email, and 6-8 months later, you might find out if something happened. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with not knowing. So how about you? So let's look at this. After they've gotten into the business's account, what can I do? One of the things we talked about and I shared earlier was the business owner who lost $250,000. There are stories left and right about businesses who lose money. And we as small business owners put all of our money in our business. I know that when I've had hard times, I take money out of my house to put in the business. When I have good times, I put it back into the house. I do everything I can to make sure employees are paid. We do things to care for our customers. So if you were to lose all your money in your bank account when you woke up in the morning and you went to work and there's no money, what are you going to do? How are you going to deal with it? And if a criminal, they get into your network, how much of an impact would that have on your business? And I'm going to use the word ransomware for a second. We've all heard ransomware. It's a big number these days. And how much are you willing to pay to get your data back? So there's just so much that is going on there that if we're not prepared, we're not ready for protecting our business or for when things bad happen, what are we going to do? One thing all of us here today have in common, small businesses. And I'm going to tell you right up now, in the front part here, being small is not a defense against cyber attacks. The cyber attackers know that small businesses don't have the tools to protect themselves like the bigger businesses do. So we become much easier targets. What we used to talk about in the military was soft targets. We are very soft targets. We know that being small is not a defense. So let's look at a couple things here. I'm not going to read all this, but it's here for you to read if you want to. There are so many statistics about businesses that are being attacked. And there's a few things. There's billions of dollars involved. And so much is happening that businesses are, let's see, I'll find one head count here, that one thing, 50% of attacks were caused by employee or contractor negligence. So that doesn't mean that they were trying to be bad. In my experience, employees want to do a good job. Contractors want to do a good job, but they make mistakes sometimes. And those mistakes are often preventable. And when they're not preventable, we have tools in place to mitigate the damage that can be caused by a cyber attack. So they're going to come after you. That's just something very true. So let's talk about a few things here. Here's a few businesses locally that I've been keeping track of over the last couple of years. And there's some that are not so local. And all of these have happened from 2000 to now. And they're big. So I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago when we didn't get our water bill from HRSD. They had a ransomware attack and their entire system was shut down. They couldn't bill anywhere in Virginia Beach. They had to rebuild their payment processing system to get it fixed. Chesapeake Regional had an attack. Norfolk Airport Authority. And while this isn't local, we talk a lot about things changing. And one of the things that caused the biggest changes is when the Colonial Pipeline was attacked. That seems like it was forever ago. And most people I talk to, they remember it happening. They remember what it was, but they don't understand the significance. And the significance is huge. What happened in this was, as the government tracks hacks against businesses, they know who the bad guys are. They know where it's coming from. They know a lot of information that we don't really ever get to know. But the details are tracked and what happens and why. And what happened with the Colonial Pipeline hack was something very new. It'd never been done before. The hackers were a small unknown group that rented the software to make the attack from a well-known group that actually knew that we were tracking. So this little known group with no skill, no knowledge, no experience in attacking, rented some software for I'd probably pennies on the dollar and shut down the Colonial Pipeline. And that's all it took. You can go on the dark web now and rent the same software to do the same thing. Of course, it's evolved, but it doesn't cost much to attack. So the bar for who attacks us and can do it successfully was lowered very low to allow unskilled attackers to attack. That was the first big change. The second one that stemmed from the Colonial Pipeline, and this is where we talked about insurance a little bit. We'll talk about it some more. But when the Colonial Pipeline was hacked, there was a lot of money involved. And the insurance companies got to a point where their great idea of cybersecurity insurance being a profit driver, they were losing money left and right. Insurance companies, as we know, they're not in the position to lose money. They're not there to lose money. They are there to make money. That's another part where things have changed. Insurance companies have adapted to fit what the bad guys are doing. So let's go and see. Here we go. So I'm going to cover a couple more statistics, and then we're going to get into the meat of some things. But if we look at it, we've all started moving to the cloud with our business. Everyone has. There's no avoiding it. And if you look, 82% of attacks happen in the cloud. And that's just this year's data. So just by moving your data in the cloud doesn't make it safe. It doesn't make it less safe, but it doesn't make it any more safe. So the criminals, they've commoditized. And I did touch on this a little bit, where the smaller companies are buying software from bigger companies. There's little technical skills required. They're selling our information on a dark web marketplace. There are so many ways that they're stealing from us. Drive-by downloads. I was talking about the email where you just click. You click and go to a web page, and you don't even know you've got the download and the malware in your computer. So there's a lot going on, and it's really tough. So now the bad guys are doing a couple of things, and you notice I'm saying criminals are what they are. We used to talk about hackers, because hackers used to be people would hack into our systems and do things. Some of them would do bad stuff, some of them wouldn't. But this is bigger than hackers. These are criminals that are hurting our businesses. And they, like it starts in the beginning, they are gangs. They sell their information for pennies on a dollar. And their skills at social engineering are second to none. They've got entire call centers that are working on calling and getting past gatekeepers and businesses to get information. There's so much they're doing. They're using our human nature against us for that. And there you go. They're leveraging real relationships. There's a business that I think it was in 2022, they had their finance folks, the ones who pay the bills, had some hackers or criminals, because we know they're criminals now, start a social engineering campaign against the company. Very quiet, very subtle. They worked to ensure that they looked like a vendor inside the company, and that everyone who was looking at the process thought they were just a vendor. And they were big enough to where some things like that can happen. And that doesn't mean they were a very big company. They only had 10 employees. But what the bill accounts payable folks were dealing with was the invoices from this vendor and getting them paid. Now, because it all looked above board and everything just worked, they paid them. There weren't checks and balances in place to prevent an unauthorized payment from going out. There were a lot of payments that went out from this company. And the only thing they did was use a little social engineering to trick the people writing the checks into thinking that those checks were for a vendor of theirs. That one cost them about $1 million. So the tough question is, your business is locked down as you think it is. Now, I talked to quite a few business owners, and some understand, some don't. I went to a realtor's office yesterday, and it's a simple network, nothing much, but they think they get their internet over Bluetooth. So not knowing technology is not their fault. They're really good at what they do, but they don't understand how much risk they have, how they're not locked down. They just know that they have technology to work. And I know we've talked a lot about money, but here you go. What happens if you mistakenly wire funds to a criminal? Have you talked to your bank about that lately? I do know one thing. Once you transfer the money, it's gone. So we have to put checks and balances and systems in place, not only to stop those transfers from going through, but to prevent the criminals from influencing our teams. All right, so let's see. There are some numbers here. I'm not going to go through all these, but they're really scary. 61% of attacks come from an employee's credentials. I said earlier that one of the cheapest fixes is getting multi-factor authentication. If they get your password, it's a lot harder for them to get in without having that second factor. 94% of attacks, they come in by email. Email is probably one of the most dangerous things you have in your business. So what are you doing to protect that? Now, 120 days to discover a data breach. That's pretty bad because by then the damage is already done. They've already either cleared your bank account out, ruined your reputation, or hurt your customers in some way. There are a lot of bad things that happen in business. 60% go under within 6 months of a data breach. We're not all Target. We're not all Home Depot. We can't succeed and survive a multi-million-dollar attack. So that's why a lot of them are hurt. They get to a point financially where they can't continue. So we talked about insurance. So let's look at that. Things have changed there too. Your cyber insurance used to be a rider in your insurance policy where they'd cover some things that happened. And it was a simple thing saying, yes, I want to do that. And I'll pay the $1,000 a year or whatever it was. Insurance has gone up so high that what used to cost $1,000 now costs $10,000. The applications, instead of a checkbox, they're 6 or 7 pages long. You have to test that you're doing certain things to protect your company. You have to sign legal contracts that say you're doing the things that are required. And now, what are the things? That's the funny thing. They don't tell you what the things are. One of the insurance policies I reviewed a few months ago said that you will follow a standard for your technology. That's it. It just says you're going to follow a standard. So what standard do you follow? Do you follow the right one or the wrong one? Because if you get the wrong one, that clause in the insurance policy was they don't have to pay if there's a data breach. This is where the insurance companies are getting tricky. So why are they making it difficult? Well, we touched on it earlier. The Colonial Pipeline. If you remember the Colonial Pipeline, insurance companies are losing money left and right, paying out for events that could be prevented. So they're requiring us to do some things to prevent attacks now. I'm going to ask you this question again. Will insurance protect you? And that's probably a no in some cases, in most cases, especially if you've renewed your cybersecurity insurance policy. So I really recommend taking a look at that because I've seen as many as 3 escape clauses for the insurance company. One said if the insured is doing anything illegal, their insurance is voided. Now, anything that we do, what is legal, what isn't, and whose determination is it? So we have to be careful. And what would you do if you had $100,000 taken out of your bank account? Just think about that for a moment. It can seem like a lot or not like a lot, but $100,000 would hurt. Now, here's the tough question. And the insurance company doesn't pay it back. What are you going to do then? Payroll's due tomorrow. You got $100,000 in payroll and you can't pay it. What's going to happen? So just a reminder, no one is too small to be hacked. You're just too small to make the news. Now, I've got a short video here that covers a little bit of some things in better language than I can about cybersecurity for your business. So just stick around for about a minute and let's go through it.
The fact that all of this infrastructure is there's this ability for worldwide hacking to do that in order to make ransom attacks. Another part will be, essentially, how do you allow the tech companies to collaborate together? To say, look, on this, you guys can collaborate. Because normally they don't compete intensely if the rules of competition or but in cyberspace, we need that security layer in order to have a healthy running society. And I think that's something.
There's the risk because does it make it a much bigger risk? And how does that work?
It takes less of this because I think people are more familiar with it. Maybe a risk that your video conferencing is hacked or listened to or something, but by the way, the hacking of spaces is usually people dropping USB keys, saying the family pics outside the parking lot in order to gain access to your corporate network and so on. So all of that is actually vector reduced. And in terms of the collaboration of work, what I think one of the reasons why I think we're seeing such a because all these tools now people are being used. They're using things like Greylock, we've invested in Coda and Figma and Emotion. They're using them to design the way they work, and design the way they work to say, how do you work? Not just follow whatever the company says it, but make your company work efficiently in the way that you have a competitive difference. Some of that is the most, which is how do we have talent that we can have anywhere? We can have the talent in Kansas, we can have the talent in Canada, we can have the talent, in the Mediterranean. All these places, we bring them together, and we can now harness them for the process.
And so as you look at your investment options now and the different categories that you want to bet on, how do you think the consumer is going to be different, both the enterprise consumer and the everyday consumer? And how do you want to think about investing in platforms, which I know you like to bet on as well as certain things in each types of consumers?
So if I think about networks and platforms, I think there's a whole world of connectivity that's coming. That's one of the ones you mentioned before. I think there's also another generation of entertainment coming. And what's more, everyone's realized, hey, this is something that we've all become much more expert at what we're talking. We've all become much more expert at our computers. We're actually, in fact, all much more digital native as a function of this, and that creates massive opportunities. And part of the evolution of these software platforms is when the next generation of, it used to be what's a word processor? Now everyone's, which are 30 word processors we use it. Now that it becomes comfortable in terms of how you do that work, you're just seeing an explosion of creativity, which is also for creative marketplaces where people are everything from Etsy to TikTok and all these places where people.
Reid Hoffman, always great to get your insight into the future. We appreciate you talking to us today.
Reverend Smith here. Thanks for watching.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sticking around with that. So I know we've taken a while to get here, but this is the main reason why you're here is how do you respond to cyber threats? How do you protect you from cyber threats? And what do you do when there is one? We already learned it's a hacker's job to steal your information. The cybersecurity landscape is hugely changed. They're attacking from everywhere. Just like we saw in the video, we can hire people from anywhere to do good jobs at protecting our businesses. But that also means that bad guys are available anywhere. And there's state actors that are really scary at what they're doing. So now what we're talking about here is prevention. So what are you going to do to discover your weaknesses and where do you start? I'll tell you. Here's the question. Is now the time to manage your risk? And what is your first step? Well, here's your first step. It's an easy one. Identify your current risk exposure. But to get that, how do you get the facts you need to make the right decision? So that's a process that we call a cybersecurity risk assessment. And what we're going to be doing over this is, over time, I'm going to be giving away everything we do for doing this process. Not because I want to be nice or anything, but because this is a simple process that every business can follow to help make sure that they stay safe and secure. And while I don't have every part of it ready for you, this is our first webinar. I've got some few things that are here. And as I was getting this ready, I thought of a bunch of new things, but I didn't want to make you spend an hour here listening to me about the things that I thought I was going to do. So every Thursday at this time, I do get live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and those sites to where we're going to be talking about the different things we can do. I'm going to be sharing the news about what goes on. And then once a month, we're going to come back here and I'm going to cover some of this stuff about risk and how do we take the actionable steps to protect your business. So let me cover the steps for that real quick. So it starts with leadership. Leadership is what has to drive these changes. Everyone on the team has to have a role. There's physical inspections, system inspections, application and data inspections. There's lots of stuff. So let me get this in a slightly more visual way of how we follow our process. What we first start doing is an executive sponsor meeting where we sit down with the stakeholders of an organization. And that sometimes means more than the business owners. There are people involved with an organization that manage processes. And we try to get all of those folks into a room and cover what the next month is going to take. As we do spend about a month doing a risk assessment where we have a timeline that we create and roles and responsibilities for each team member for what is required to get. So that's what that meeting lays out. We hand out all the tools, all the resources, and some of the training material. It's where we get everyone on the same page of why we're doing what we're doing, making sure they understand that some of the tests we can't share with the team because we want them to be surprises. We don't want them to know something's happening because we want to be able to test them to make sure that they're able to understand some of the policies. Now, a lot of businesses we work with don't have policies. So to start with, that's one of the areas of risk we work on. As you see, security policy interview. That's the very first thing. Do we have a policy? Because if a business has a policy, we review that. And you can review your security policy. But from that policy, we look to see what's missing. What are important things that should be in that policy? What are some things that shouldn't be in that policy? We don't make that determination there. We are going through and reviewing it, analyzing it, getting information, because we're going to use some of that information later as we assess employee actions for different events. So after we finish the interview, we conduct a physical environment inspection. Now, we all see our business every day. And one of the things that my team and I do is we don't look at it the way you do. We look at what ways risk is involved. How can the bad things happen? How can the bad guys get in your windows? Are things secure? Do you have machines that are sitting that don't require passwords to get in? Is the Wi-Fi password on the wall somewhere? There's hundreds of things that are looked at, and part of the checklist I'll provide will have that. So you're just looking at physical things. There's so many things to look at. Then we look at a network review. This is something that you've probably seen from a bunch of IT companies saying, we're going to come in and give you a free network scan. This is like that, only a bit more in depth. It's about a full understanding of what the network is from your cloud environment, like Microsoft, all the way down to the keyboard of where your most junior employee is working. We have to know every part of it. From there, we look at data. Your data is what runs a business, and every business's data is different. So what kind of data does your business have? Where does it need to be? Who's responsible for that data? Who uses the data, and why do they use it? Now, something that used to be more in, I'll say, the defense industry or bigger companies was segmentation of roles and jobs and access to information. Large organizations, even the military, not everyone has access to everything. But in our small businesses, that's been the norm. That once you're on the network, you have access to what's there. There isn't the time to manage it and keep track of it and who needs what, because everything happens so fast in our little businesses. So what's important at this step is to find out who needs access to what, why they need access to it. And if they don't need access, make that access go away, because you're able to reduce one of the attack vectors. And let's intellectual property review. This is a really challenging one in that you have data for your business, but what's some intellectual property you have? It's what can a bad guy steal? What can they use against you? I can't talk too much about this one. It's a new process that we just added, and I'll share it as we get along. I'm going to be going through each one of these in detail on the next month. Then we have user and system review. So this is a really, how do I say it? Not subjective, but we look at the users and systems, and it's a continuation of data of who needs access to what, why they need access to it, and what restrictions should be put in place. And there's a lot more that goes into that as well. It's a several-week process of collecting data just so we can find that information. This second to last one, it seems small, a dark web research. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the dark web is like the internet, only dark? No, it's more than that. I know. It was a poor joke. But the dark web is a place where criminals have their internet where they buy and sell information and people. In the dark web, they buy and sell people. Your email address is worth pennies to them. Your credit card number might be worth $10. They can buy your credit card number for $10 on the dark web. So what we do is a search on the dark web to see if there's any information about your business out there. And that's part of a canary in a coal mine. Because if we see information out there, it means the bad guys are doing something. They may not be attacking you yet, but they might have tools that are collecting enough data to make that attack happen. And then finally, we have a team behavior test. If you remember earlier, we talked about the security policy review. That one is the policy that's supposed to help guide employee interactions with technology and how they should do things, how they shouldn't. How should they respond when they get a certain type of email? Should they go to certain websites? Shouldn't they go to certain other websites? Are they blocked? Are we blocking social media at work? Are we blocking malicious sites at work? How are we doing that? Then we test the employees on, did they get caught by different attacks? So there's simulated attacks we perform to see if the employees get caught, because we do everything before all this and make sure our business is safe and secure. But then we have Susie in accounting who missed a day. And of course, she's a target because she has access to money. So we want to find out where those weakest links are so we can strengthen them. Now, this is the overview of the process. So each one of these processes has checklists and workbooks that go with it that we'll be releasing soon. It's things we've done for years for our clients and how they're done. And once this is released, you'll be able to do some of the things yourself to see how safe your business is. There's a few specialized tools we use, and we'll recommend other tools that you can use as well. And that's where part of the challenge is that they do get expensive. Your time is expensive and the tools are expensive, but they're worth it. So next month, we'll cover some more and I'll go in details, but let me go through a little bit more about what the next step is. So as one of my coaches always says to me, execute. If we're not taking action, how can we keep our business safe? I suggest taking action now. And there's a couple ways you can do that. I know I didn't give you a full workbook yet, but this was just to get you in mind of what security is and why we're doing it. I don't want to give this history lesson all the time because it's not as much fun as learning how to protect from that bad stuff. So let's start looking at the things that we do in our business. Do we have multi-factor turned on? That's the very first thing you should do. Go make sure everyone in your organization has multi-factor turned on. And if you have a way of making sure that's automatic, that they don't have a choice, do that. That's the number one free thing I could say to do right now is to turn multi-factor authentication on. And there's a good chance it's probably not, as I see it turned off more often than not. Anyway, I want to talk a little about me. We're almost done, so I just want to share this with you. These are some of our clients we work with. We've worked with quite a few locally and remote, a variety of fields. We've specialized mostly in IT compliance, mostly focusing on businesses that have to protect certain data like credit card data or Defense Department data. And now that the insurance companies are coming out and saying, you've got to follow these policies, we're bringing those policies out so we can help you see what they are and try to take action to protect your business in case there's a breach. Because hopefully by now you've learned that the insurance companies may not protect you. And if any of you, it's like a message somebody just said, I just looked at my insurance policy and I had that in it. So think of it. What is your insurance policy saying about what you should be doing to protect your business in case of a data breach? So I do have a couple questions here for some folks. One person asked, do we need cybersecurity insurance? So I am not an insurance salesperson. I think there's laws around it, but what I'll say is, would you drive your car without a seatbelt or without insurance? Some people do, but most of us don't. It's the same for our business. Your cybersecurity protections are your seatbelt, and your insurance is there to help pay to put the parts back together when things happen at the end. But if you're not wearing your seatbelt, it's a lot harder to fix you up at the end. And in this case, the insurance company said, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, we're not going to pay you. So it's a catch-22. Should you have cybersecurity insurance? I require all my clients to have cybersecurity insurance. Why? Because the other insurance doesn't cover a cyber attack. So that insurance is very helpful. So another one is, how do we train our employees on cybersecurity risks? So that is it's easy and challenging at the same time. There are a lot of ways that we can teach our teams, from group training sessions to automated trainings. And their effectiveness varies for each individual. So some people are great visual learners, some people need to learn in a team. But I will say that regular training sessions, phishing simulations, and awareness programs are really great ways to educate employees on the best practices. And I'll tell you this right now, I know your employees, they want to do a good job. I've never met an employee who doesn't want to do a good job. So if we don't give them the tools to do a good job, they're going to make mistakes that affect their job and yours. So just training them is going to help keep everyone safe. And the final question I got here is, what should we do in the event of a data breach? So the very first thing you should do is call your attorney as the only one who will be your friend throughout that process. The next person you should call is your IT company and then your insurance provider. Now, there's a lot that has to happen when a data breach happens, and you want to make sure experts are there to address it. Your attorney will know the legal aspects of it and help make sure you're legally protected where that has to happen, because there's a lot of different legal requirements. The Securities Exchange Commission just said that any publicly traded company now has to report the data breach within 4 days. You've got the Health and Homeland Security folks who want reports when there's a breach. You've got medical practices who, if there's a breach, they have to report. And they're very detailed reporting processes. So we want to make sure we contact our attorney first. Your IT company or your trusted IT provider, they're going to have to do things to isolate what the challenge was, because the insurance company is going to expect an investigation to happen. And they're going to try and bring a third party in to do that, which will work with your IT company. But those are the things you want to think of, is make sure that you've got those people in your back pocket when something happens. So if you wake up tomorrow morning and you're missing $100,000 from your bank account, you don't know why, call your lawyer. Or if you come into the office tomorrow and all your computers are encrypted, call your attorney, then call your IT guy. It's not that your IT guy shouldn't be first, but you need to protect yourself legally first. So that was the last question I have. But what I do have for you, and I will promise I will never, ever sell you in these talks. I'm not here to sell anything. My goal is to give away tools and resources to help you protect your business. But I am here, and I'm just going to give you a simple thing. That link, oops, my link is wrong, but zzservers.com/ss is my personal calendar. And if you ever want to chat about anything, just go to that website. And I'm going to say it, instead of putting it here, let me see if I can put it in chat. That way everyone can have it. And I'll do it right. So anyway, so that is the link to get to my calendar. I'll be back here every Thursday with a little bit more on talking about how to deal with the risk in your business and how to protect yourself from it. I don't want to see any business have to get hurt. And I'm going to do what I can to protect as many businesses as possible, even including giving away what I do and how I do it. With that, we took a few minutes longer than I thought. I really hope you got something good out of our time today. And I look forward to spending time with you every Thursday here as I actually get better at this. So I really am super excited about you being here. Anyway, if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Reach out. Contact us at ZZ Servers. Our phone number is there. Reach out to one of my clients and talk to them. I love them too. So anyway, thank you so much for coming. Stop by our website and take a look at some of our risk resources. We have some new material coming online. I just worked with a security expert yesterday who's going to be creating some extra content for us, and I can't wait. So thank you so much. Happy Thursday, and I look forward to seeing you next week.